Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. We're a little bit later this week because I had my live stream show on Sunday for my 5-year anniversary here on the channel. Thank you to everybody who joined me. It was such a great time. So I was a little bit behind because of that, and I had a lot of prep because not only did we have a fantastic second weekend hold for Sinners, and we're going to jump into all those numbers. But this is also the time of year where I make my predictions on the top 10 highest grossing summer movies, because summer movie season, although not summer itself, starts this upcoming weekend. So there was a lot of prep and a lot of stuff to get to. We've got a packed show, so let's jump right into it. And we will start with the box office from this past weekend, where Sinners remained number one. That wasn't a surprise, but it had a drop-off of 4.8%. for $45.7 million in its second weekend, $123.2 million total. That is an outstanding number in so many ways, and we're going to jump into those right after I get through the top 10. Another really interesting number, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, the 20th anniversary re-release, made $25.4 million in second place. If Sinners had dropped off like a normal movie, it would have been competing for first place, so Disney's got to be happy with that number. In a close third place was The Accountant 2, which opened to $24.4 million, so a very, very tight competition for second and third between those two movies. A Minecraft movie dropped 43.9%. It came in at $22.7 million, so a very, very tight 2 through 4. And then in fifth place, Until Dawn debuted with just over $8 million. This is the first time since August of 2023, which was week 3 of Barbenheimer and the opening of Meg 2 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, that the top 4 have all been above $20 million. Coming in at number 6 was The King of Kings, which dropped 76%. Not a surprise since it was tied so closely to Easter. It brought in $4.2 million. The Amateur brought in $3.6 million for a $33.7 million total. Warfare brought in $2.6 million. It's now at $21.8 million. In ninth place was the re-release of Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii. It was a specialty release, but it paid off at $2.6 million. And The Legend of Ochi in its second week had a big jump percentage-wise at 2,648%. That's because it went from a very small number of theaters to over 1,000 theaters. It still only brought in $1.4 million. So A24 losing a bit of their touch at the box office lately. They've had some stuff that's done well and some stuff that hasn't done quite as well. 5 movies dropped out of the top 10 this past weekend. Snow White is out after 5 weeks. Drop is out after 2 weeks, as is The Chosen Last Supper Part 3. Colorful Stage, the movie, and Pride and Prejudice, the re-release of the 2005 version, are both out after just 1 week. And looking at the biggest theater count changes, A Working Man lost 1,297 theaters. The bulk of its remaining theaters, it's now in 580. Drop lost 1,216 theaters. It's now in 1,873. It actually hits premium video on demand today. So this is a very short theatrical window exclusively for that film. The Legend of Ochi added 1,149 theaters. Sneaks, which we talked about last week, one of the worst ever debuts for a movie in 1,500 theaters or more, lost about 1,092 of them. It's now in 408. Snow White lost 1,040 theaters, the bulk of its remaining theaters. It's now in just 610 as it brings its disappointing box office run to a conclusion. Looking at our road to recovery, the red line is the box office weekend average for 2021 to 2024. The blue line is the weekend average for 2015 to 2019. And while we were below the average pre-pandemic, because it's largely skewed due to Marvel releasing Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame on the last weekend in April, we are still well above where we have been over the last really pre-April weeks of 2025 for the most part. And we're going to look at the market share and how we're doing year to date versus past years in a few minutes as well. As I said, there's a lot to get to today. Overall, this past weekend, we had a strong batch of openers. Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and The Accountant 2 put up the 6th and 7th best opening weekend of 2025 so far. And unless something catastrophic happens, we're going to be adding Thunderbolts to this list on the show next week. So let's talk about Sinners, which is continuing from its really impressive opening, a strong debut last weekend, to an absolutely phenomenal hold in weekend number 2. When you looked at the weekly numbers, it looked like this was going to have a very good weekend because it held very strong during the week. I think we're continuing that trend this week. But Sinners put up numbers that we very rarely see from a movie of its size and a movie of its release structure. So let's look at its weekend 1 to weekend 2 hold. First of all, when it comes to how big the movie opened, these are the best week 2 holds for a movie that opened to $40 million or more. The best hold was for Shrek in its second weekend back in 2001. It actually opened over $40 million and held essentially steady in its second weekend, plus 0.3%. Then we have Avatar back on Christmas of 2009, which dropped just 1.8% from weekend 1 to weekend 2. And then we have Sinners, which dropped just 4.8%. And when you look at all of these movies, Sinners is the only one of these four that did not have a holiday weekend to help boost that second week growth. So really, it's kind of unprecedented even amongst this group of movies. How the Grinch Stole Christmas dropped 5.4% back in November of 2000, and Meet the Fockers dropped 9.5%. Let's look at best week 2 holds for a movie in 3,000 or more theaters. So we look at the number or the size of its release. Now, there is one caveat here, which is that these are non-holiday weekends, because as we've talked about here on the show very often, weekend box office operates differently from the regular box office. And so this doesn't include movies that had a second weekend that fell during Christmas or that week around Christmas and New Year's, or movies that had a second week where a Mother's Day movie did well on Mother's Day, or a Valentine's Day movie did better on Valentine's Day, or more kids were out of school because of Veterans Day, which was very common when you looked at these holds in the second weekend for these big 3,000 plus theater releases. So these are non-holiday weekends. Puss in Boots dropped off 3% on the weekend of November 4th, 2011, and then Sinners puts up the best week 2 hold for a movie in 3,000 or more theaters with minus 4.8%. That beats Crazy Rich Asians, which held to minus 6.4% in its non-holiday second weekend. Argo at minus 15.5%, and Taken at minus 16.9%. So there's really no way of getting around it. There's no asterisk. There's no notes that you can make. Sinners held on to an almost unprecedented degree to the audience that it reached in its first weekend. And it's not just good word of mouth, it's phenomenal word of mouth, and it's becoming a cultural phenomenon. It's breaking into the overall discussion. I mean, we've talked about good movies here before. We've talked about great movies here before. You just don't see holds like this. This is very uncommon. This is going to be, even if it was just this weekend, this is one of those greatest showman situations that I call here on the show, where you're tracking a movie that defies all expectations, that defies all trends and things that you would expect from other movies. And it indicates that what we have here is something very special. And I talked about this on the show last week. And last week's episode of Charts generated so much more attention than I expected. It was one of the best performing episodes in the history of this series because people wanted to hear about what Sinners had been doing, and I laid out my opinions as far as the coverage that the movie had gotten thus far, specifically from Variety, and I got a lot of feedback, people that thought that it was interesting, and to be fair, I got a large amount of feedback from people that thought that I had unfairly or at least unwisely discounted the racial element of the media coverage of Sinners, and I acknowledged that in the episode last week. I laid out my argument, and certainly everything that I say here on the show, it's just my opinion. It's just my take on things. I like to hear what people say. I like to hear what other people's opinions are. We disagreed on this point. And a lot of the argument was, hey, I'm making this argument based on my lived experience and what I've experienced, something that you don't share. And I understand that. Everything's from my perspective and what I have to say. Disagreement is always welcome here. The only thing that I pushed back on, the only thing that I bristled at were a handful of people, and not the majority by any means, saying that I was willfully tailoring my coverage, that I was purposely covering for a system that was discriminatory against Black filmmakers and Black people in general in this country. And that I will push back against, because that's just not true in any way, shape, or form. I think you have to look really hard at my coverage to say that that's what I was doing. And I think that that's out of line, to be frank. But everything else, the disagreement and saying, I believe that race played a bigger role in that, you're absolutely welcome and free to have that discussion. As I said, that was my analysis. Everyone's free to theirs. What I like is that this is a movie that has inspired discussion creatively, financially, across so many different areas. In my review, I said, I think that it's a really special movie. I think that it is a special movie. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the response to a movie that connects to people in a way that not many movies do. And when we talk about original filmmaking, these are the top grosses for movies in the 2020s, original movies this decade. And as I said, my definition is not a sequel or directly based on a previous film, published work, or real people or events. Sinners is already at number 4 on that list. It's just behind Nope. And let's be frank, probably before we even get to this upcoming weekend, it is going to be the highest grossing original film of the decade. So it opened in the company of a lot of other movies, including Jordan Peele's Nope. It is going to far exceed all of those other original films. There was, of course, some very healthy competition this past weekend with Star Wars and The Accountant 2 and other movies that were entering the marketplace. But with Thunderbolts opening, I'll be very interested to see how Sinners holds up. I think it's going to weather it well, but that will also give us some indication as to the long-term prospects of it. When we're talking about final gross, we're not talking about hit or not. I think we're beyond that point. The trajectory that it's on, we're looking at a minimum $200 million domestic final gross. And I think that's really if the bottom drops out and it just starts performing like your average movie at this point. But it's going to be very interesting to me to see how it performs against such high-profile competition this upcoming week, and then how it does as it goes into the early part of the summer movie season. Sinners has also moved up to number 7 on the all-time highest-grossing live-action vampire movies list. It should bypass Twilight there at number 6 once it gets to $200 million. And then the question is, how well does it keep holding up? Does it have enough to get to I Am Legend at $256.3 million? I don't think it's out of the question. So it could get as high as number 5 on this list. And when you look at the 2025 annual domestic box office, we're going to shuffle things up, the order up a little bit this week because I'm doing my summer picks in the show as well. Sinners is now the 3rd highest grossing film of the year domestically at $123.2 million, behind Captain America Brave New World and a Minecraft movie. That knocked Snow White and Dogman down a spot each. The King of Kings moves up to number 6. It's a 3-spot jump from last week. One of Them Days moves down to number 7. Mickey 17 is down to number 8. Paddington in Peru is down to number 9. And The Monkey stays at number 10. Well, as I mentioned, it wasn't just Sinners at the box office this weekend. Star Wars Episode 3 also had its re-release, and it was a successful re-release. When we look at the opening grosses for Star Wars re-releases domestically, Revenge of the Sith this past weekend came in only behind the 1997 Star Wars Special Edition as far as its opening weekend. That movie opened at $35.9 million back in 1997. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace 3D, comes in at number 3 back in 2012 at $22.4 million. The movie that launched honest trailers before my time. The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi Special Editions round out the list at number 4 and 5. If you adjust those numbers for inflation, then the original trilogy still holds the title as far as the best openings, with the Star Wars Special Edition at $69.8 million adjusted. Can you imagine that? A re-release opening to nearly $70 million, although it was many people's, including mine, first chance to see Star Wars on a big screen. I was, 14 years old. It was 20 years after the original had come out. Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi Special Editions are at 2nd and 3rd place. Then we have the Phantom Menace 3D re-release at $30.5 million in 4th place. And then this release of Revenge of the Sith at $25.4 million in 5th place. This does add some to the total domestic gross of Revenge of the Sith. When we look at the highest grossing Star Wars films domestically, it's not going to move it past Return of the Jedi. It was already there, but it does move it closer to the original Star Wars, and it becomes the 7th Star Wars film to break the $400 million domestic barrier when you add that extra re-release money onto the final gross of the film. And when you look at the highest grossing Star Wars films adjusted for inflation, of course, the original Star Wars is untouchable. It's at $1.9 billion adjusted. And by the way, I didn't just take the final gross and adjust it for 1977 for Star Wars or any of the other movies. I took what it made in 1977 and adjusted that for inflation, then what it made in 1997 and adjusted that for inflation. So the different releases are adjusted differently because I'm me and I can't help it. The Force Awakens is at 2nd at $1.2 billion adjusted, followed by The Empire Strikes Back in 3rd place at nearly $1 billion, Return of the Jedi in 4th place at $942.6 million, The Phantom Menace at $900 million in 5th place, The Last Jedi is in 6th place at $809 million, Rogue One is in 7th at $710.9 million, but what this release has done is moved Revenge of the Sith ahead of The Rise of Skywalker. when it comes to highest grossing films adjusted for inflation. So Revenge of the Sith now in 8th place at $648.1 million. The Rise of Skywalker in 9th place at $644.4 million. And Attack of the Clones rounding out the top 10 at $552.2 million. So Revenge of the Sith would have had, as I said, a shot at number 1 had Sinners not performed as phenomenally well as it did. But that does bring me to this week's trivia question here on the show. Revenge of the Sith wasn't able to do it, but apart from 2020, when was the last time a re-release was number 1 at the domestic box office? 2020 is a bit of an asterisk year because they did release a lot of movies when very few theaters were open, and they made it to number 1 from time to time. I will tell you that you have not seen one of those movies, aka it's not a Star Wars movie. So what do you think was the last time a re-release was number 1? Well, here comes the answer. It was September 16th through the 18th, 2011, when The Lion King was released for the first time in 3D, that post-Avatar boom of releasing films in 3D. It opened at number 1 with $30.1 million. So it's been about 13 and a half years since the re-release was number 1 at the box office, COVID excluded. A little bit of Minecraft news for you as well, because it's still hanging around. It has now become the 6th highest grossing film domestically in the history of Warner Brothers. Obviously, if you don't adjust for inflation, it has moved past American Sniper and The Batman, and it is very close to moving beyond Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 for number 5 on that list. Then the question remains, how far into the 400 millions does it get? Does it pass Wonder Woman? Does it get to 450 to pass The Dark Knight Rises? But this has been quite a month for Warner Brothers, and that's a good transition to talk about an update to where we are so far this year. When we talked about the box office back near the end of March, it was pretty dire because March was pretty dire at the box office. Well, April has been a completely different story, and Warner Brothers has almost exclusively driven that success with a Minecraft movie and Sinners. So let's look first of all at the market share so far for 2025. This is all movie tickets sold since January 1st. This is where we were at the end of March. Disney had 35% of all tickets sold. Universal was at 19.35%. And if you look at the very top of your screen, there's a small slice, a tiny slice that says Warner Brothers, 4.99%. At the end of March, they had just under 5% market share of ticket sales this year. Let's see how things look as we're almost at the end of April. Warner Brothers has jumped from 5% market share to the leader in market share this year. Warner Brothers films, and really Minecraft and Sinners, have sold 26% of all tickets in 2025 so far. So they went from nearly worst to first. Disney is in second place at 24.78%. All other studios have the third biggest slice at 15.59%. Universal's at 14%. Sony is at 7.7%. Paramount has really been sitting on the sidelines. They're at 5.26%. And then Lionsgate and Amazon both have about 3.25%. So yeah, that is a huge turnaround for Warner Brothers. I mean, they came out with guns blazing, and it's been a blessed month for them. I mean, both of their major releases hit as well as you could probably ask for each of them respectively. A big franchise video game movie and a higher budget original film. And so Warner Brothers has the lead. Disney's probably going to grab that lead back with Thunderbolts and as we get into the summer movie season. But Warner Brothers has gone from an also-ran to now an industry leader because of the performances of these movies. And let's keep in mind, they had been releasing movies earlier in 2025. They just had not been performing that well. Let's talk about cumulative domestic box office. At the end of March, we had fallen about $200 million behind where we were in 2024 due to a string of disappointments box office-wise that month. Let's see where we are now as we get toward the end of April 2025, and we have now regained the lead that we had on 2024. We're now about $200 million ahead of where we were in 2024, so that's just how much ground that we've made up. Still about $400 million behind where we were in 2023, although if you'll remember, the summer box office in 2023 had several financial disappointments in it. If the summer box office this year is able to perform better, then we have a good shot at making up ground on 2023 and really hopefully getting to that $10 billion mark. But we have to sustain this momentum. The first quarter of the year, not particularly impressive. this second quarter, third quarter, and then the holiday season, we've really got to do well if we want to hit that mark, because we did not come out of the gate very strong. It's all about closing speed now. But April really washing away many of the sins, no pun intended, that we saw at the box office in March. And as we enter the summer movie season, Thunderbolts is the first one out of the gate. It's opening this upcoming weekend. And Marvel has kind of staked out this first weekend in May. Several MCU and non-MCU Marvel films have opened on the first weekend. And I've been giving you some easier options, or at least not as challenging options, on the member poll lately. So I decided to give you a tougher choice this week. The member poll question this week is, what is your favorite Marvel movie, doesn't have to be MCU, that opened on the first weekend in May? And I chose 4 that I think are pretty good. Spider-Man, which opened back in 2002, the original film starring Tobey Maguire. The Avengers back in 2012. Iron Man, which opened in 2008. Or X2, X-Men United, which many people have chosen, at least prior to some of the more recent films, as the best of the X-Men films. Of these 4 movies, which of these is your favorite? It was designed to be a hard choice. So I'm curious to see if it's a runaway, then I've underestimated the audience yet again. But these are your 4 options for your favorite Marvel film that opened on the first weekend in May. By the way, last weekend with The Accountant 2 coming out, my question was, which Ben Affleck movie would you like to see a sequel to? One that he's made a while ago that doesn't already have a sequel. Dogma, by the way, which many people cited, already has a sequel in the works, according to Kevin Smith. The winner here kind of surprised me. Armageddon was the winner of this poll at 36%. They want to see Ben Affleck take on another asteroid and then talk in a director's commentary on the Criterion Collection about how stupid the plot is. Gone Girl was in second place, but a pretty distant second, 27%. Good Will Hunting was right behind Gone Girl at 23%. Not much of a desire to see Daredevil come back with Ben Affleck playing the role. It came in at just 14%. If you are not a member here on the channel, you can become a member. There might be a button for you to click depending on how you're watching this video. There's definitely a link down in the description below. You'll be able to vote in this member poll each and every week, as well as get things like custom badges and emoji to use in the chat. And you'll also get early access to many of my videos. Often this show comes out early for members. I'm just a little bit behind because of a busy weekend with the anniversary stream and everything else. But reviews that I'm able to get to you early, you'll get that. Other videos that don't really have a timeline on it, you'll get that early as a member of the channel. I'd love to have you come and be a part. Let's take a look now at the top movies outside of the US and Canada. These are the top 5 films internationally, and a Minecraft movie stays at number 1 with $37.8 million. Star Wars Episode 3 at $17 million comes in second place. The Accountant 2 comes in third at 13.5. In a close fourth place is Sinners at 13.5. We didn't see a huge expansion of the box office internationally, which was not expected, but it held about as steady as the box office did here domestically. So it seems like audiences in other countries that are seeing the film are responding similarly, and I saw reports that it had maintained or even moved up the charts in some countries. And then in fifth place was Detective Conan, One-Eyed Flashback at $12.9 million. When you take those international numbers, combine them with our domestic numbers, you get the top 5 films worldwide. No surprise here, a Minecraft movie stays number 1 with another $60.5 million. That's about a 40% drop off. It's now above the $800 million worldwide mark. Sinners comes in second place at $58.5 million, a 7.7% drop worldwide. Of course, the domestic heavy performance and how well it held here in the domestic market helps to contribute to that drop. But again, it didn't drop that much in other countries either. It's now at $161.6 million. Once we get that third weekend of profitability in, I think I might do a profitability breakdown here on the show and just see, what it's looking like financially. Star Wars Episode 3 comes in third place with another $42.2 million for its re-release. The Accountant 2 is in fourth place at $38.1 million. And then we have Until Dawn in fifth place at $18.1 million. And when we look at the highest grossing Star Wars films worldwide, again, Revenge of the Sith is not really going to change positions, but this puts it very close to the $900 million mark worldwide. I think it's safe to say that even if a lot of theaters drop the re-release this upcoming weekend, it will become the 6th Star Wars film to break $900 million worldwide. It's in ahead of the original Star Wars, Attack of the Clones, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. The top grossing Star Wars film worldwide, of course, is The Force Awakens at just over $2 billion, followed by The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, and Episode 1, The Phantom Menace are also members of the $1 billion club. Sinners has become one of the top grossing films of the year worldwide. It's at $161.6 million. That makes it number 7 worldwide so far this year, ahead of Dogman, Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy, and Mickey 17. Creation of the Gods 2 is in 6th place with Snow White, Captain America Brave New World, Detective Chinatown 1900, a Minecraft movie, and Nudja 2, rounding out the rest of the global top 10. Nudja 2 at about $2.1 billion. We have so much more to get to this week, but before we do, I want to thank the sponsor for this week's show. This episode's brought to you by Square. We've all been in line stuck behind 8 other people who are taking forever to pay, or had to spend time rubbing the stripe on our card because the machine just won't take it. With Square, you don't have to worry about any of that. Paying is as simple as pulling out your phone and letting Square take care of the rest. It's possible that you've used Square and didn't even know it. Their hardware blends right into any space, and for business owners, all you have to do is set everything up and start taking payments. When I'm in LA, I love to stop by Shake Shack, and it's always so easy to order and pay at their kiosks because they're one of so many businesses that trust Square to handle their payments. There are car shops, salons, appliance stores, and taxi services near me, all small businesses that use Square because it can do whatever you need. And businesses can operate Square online or in person at one store or several, and it not only handles sales but can track inventory and sales as well. I'm technically a small business owner, and if I ever want to set up an online store, Square is going to be a great option for me because they can help you do that in just a few minutes. Whether you're a shopper or you own a business, Square is all about speed and convenience, and it supports all major credit cards and payment methods like Apple Pay and Google Pay. If you're a new business owner or one that's looking to grow your business, Square has all the tools you need and keeps up so you don't have to slow down. Get everything you need to run and grow your business without any long-term commitments. And why wait? Right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/Dan. That's SQUARE.com/GO/Dan. We're going to do the summer predictions in their own segment, so I want to close out the last of the weekend charts that we have. We're going to look at some of our specialty charts. These are the top per theater averages for the past weekend. At number 1 was Drop Dead City at $22,476 per theater in one theater. This is a documentary about New York City's 1975 fiscal crisis, which saw New York come close to declaring bankruptcy. The documentary takes its name from a very famous news headline at that time. Magic Farm comes in second place with $18,314 per theater in one theater. This is a movie about a documentary crew that accidentally goes to the wrong country to cover their subject. The cast includes Chloe Sevigny and Alex Wolff. In third place is one of the most landmark films of all time, 8.5 by Federico Fellini, which has a 35mm restoration. A new print is going to be making the rounds. It brought in $14,457 in just one theater, and it'll be going to many different theaters around the country. Sinners comes in fourth place at $13,657 per theater. And Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith rounds out the top 5 with just over $9,000 per theater in each of its 2,800 theaters. Looking at the movies in limited release this past weekend, Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii in 678 theaters leads the way at $2.6 million. Then we have the latest live presentation of the Met Opera, The Marriage of Figaro, which is like the MCU of opera. That's one of the bigger ones. 800 theaters, just under $1 million for that. Thudarum, which is a film from India in an unknown number of theaters, brought in $713,000. This is a Malayalam language action film about a man and his beloved car. In fourth place is Cheech and Chong's last movie in 832 theaters. It brought in about $560,000. And then we have On Swift Horses, which played in 755 theaters. It's from a director called Daniel Minahan, whose last movie was a while ago. It was one that I really liked back in 2001 called Series 7, The Contenders. He's since become a prolific TV director. On Swift Horses is about a family in post-Korean War LA and Las Vegas, and it's got quite a cast. Daisy Edgar-Jones, Jacob Elordi, Will Poulter, Sasha Calle, and Diego Calva. So that's the box office for this past weekend. Let's talk about the box office for this upcoming weekend and for the next few months, because this is the beginning of the summer movie season. The first weekend in May, Hollywood has been able to rewire all of our brains so that we can accept that summer movie season begins in early May. And as I do every single year on the show, I like to make my predictions about what the highest grossing movies domestically are going to be I should note that these are domestic numbers, not worldwide numbers, because it's just fun. It's something we used to do at Screen Junkies, and it's something that I like to do here on the channel as well. We're going to carry that tradition over. I looked at the entire release schedule. I made my picks for the 10 highest grossing movies, and this is an interesting year, as it often is, but they're interesting in different ways. I think the top 6 or 7 this year are pretty locked in. I'm pretty confident. I don't have a whole lot of questions about whether or not they're going to be part of the 10 highest grossing movies. But then I think that there's a group of like 12 to 15 movies that all could be in that 7 to 10 area. And so it was tough to make the call and decide what movies I wanted to put there, why I was confident in one film versus another. Sometimes I just had to go with a hunch. So these are my guesses for what I think the 10 highest grossing films of the summer will be. Many of you like to play along at home. And of course, I will be tracking it right here on the channel throughout the summer. And let's start with number 10, my pick for the 10th highest grossing film of the summer. This is a really hard one to pick, but I went with The Bad Guys 2, which opens in August. August often has a movie that makes the top 10 for the summer. And honestly, I'm just expecting an uptick here after the original came out a few years ago. It was a time when family films at theaters were kind of regaining their footing. It was a little dicey right as we were coming back from COVID. Some broke out, but others were not performing as well. The Bad Guys seems to still have some popularity. I think it picked up some popularity on streaming. It's at the beginning of August. It really has that month to itself as far as new movies aimed at kids. Again, this is just a hunch, but I'm going with The Bad Guys 2 at number 10. At number 9, some people might be surprised to see it this low. I'm picking Elio, which is the newest film from Pixar. The floor for Pixar right now is Lightyear as far as how much money it's going to make. Now, it's possible that this is a Strange World type total misfire, but I think it's also possible that it's a huge breakout. I mean, Lightyear still was a top 10 summer movie. It made over $100 million. I've got to be honest, I don't have a huge amount of faith in it. I think it just seems like it might be a tough sell. It's at the heart of the summer with lots of competition before and after it. But this is sort of a hybrid between me saying I don't think that Pixar is going to fall that far and also hedging my bets a little bit in case it's a breakout so that if it does do really well, if we have an Inside Out style hit, then at least it's on my top 10, even if I look silly for having it that low. But I've only got it at number 9. Pretty low for a Pixar film, I know. At number 8 is Thunderbolts, which opens this weekend. And really starting from here, this isn't me saying that the movie's not going to do well. This is about relative strength. It's not at number 8 because I think it's going to flop. It's at number 8 because I think that there are some other movies that are going to do better. I'm optimistic about this summer movie season. And I think that the last month has shown that, perhaps I should be optimistic about it. So I've got Thunderbolts at 8, but I'm actually looking forward to the film, and I don't think that it's going to bomb or flop or anything like that. At number 7 is a pick that I think might also be a bit risky. F1, which opens in late June. Formula One is not huge in the US, but I'm betting on spectacle and premium format. We have Joseph Kosinski directing, who helped to guide Top Gun Maverick into a big draw. The risk here, I think, is that if it's not a very good movie, then it could disappear quickly from the box office charts and not make the top 10. But it just feels to me like this could be a dad movie, like one of those movies that your dad or your uncle or whoever only goes to the theater 3 times a year to see a movie. It feels like F1 might be that movie. So I put F1 in my top 10 at number 7. At number 6, I have Jurassic World Rebirth. Now, a lot of people might be surprised that I put it this low. I have it at number 6 because even with all the returning original cast in Jurassic World Dominion, there was still a drop-off from Fallen Kingdom, even though there were some other similar movies that were performing well. So I don't think you can put it all up to early days after COVID. I just have a feeling that audiences still like these movies, that they like the Jurassic franchise, but that the interest is waning a bit and that the trend is going to continue at the summer box office. Again, not saying it's going to be a flop. I'm just not putting it in my top 5. So Jurassic World Rebirth at number 6. At number 5, I have Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. And the reckoning here is going to be the determination of whether the disappointment of Dead Reckoning Part 1, which is now just Dead Reckoning, was really due to the fact that it came out so close to Barbenheimer, or if audiences really are moving on from this franchise. I'm obviously betting a little bit more that it had to do with Barbenheimer and that people are going to go see it again for the spectacle, for Tom Cruise, for the franchise that's being sold as sort of the culmination to the Mission Impossible franchise. That might draw some people in. But if it has a similar performance to Dead Reckoning Part 1, then it really is going to be kind of undeniable that it didn't have as much to do with Barbenheimer. It had more to do with the fact that it's almost a 30-year-old franchise at this point. At number 4, this just seems appropriate. I put The Fantastic Four: First Steps. There are a lot of questions around this movie launching a new franchise. Do people care about the Fantastic Four? Are they soured by the previous films in the franchise that weren't very good? This is just, I guess, kind of a bet on Marvel that they're going to be able to return to that Marvel magic and bring audiences in a way that they used to. It is a brutal summer, though. Fantastic Four comes out at the end of July, so it does have that August largely to itself when it comes to the big blockbuster films, but it's very possible that it does drop down this list. I just have a feeling that Marvel is going to be able to attract a lot of that interest in the way that they have done traditionally. At number 3, I have Superman. This is really a vote of confidence for James Gunn. He's drawn big business with lesser known superheroes. I think that the movie looks good. I'm hoping that it will be good. And if it is good, I think that there is desire for a fresh Superman movie. If it's not good, we have seen that brand loyalty can only go so far. So a lot of these bets are quality bets. Some people might say that's a bad idea when it comes to box office, but really it's all guesswork at this point. Nobody knows what's really going to happen. So I've got Superman at number 3. At number 2, I have the live action remake of How to Train Your Dragon, which opens in the middle of June. I think that it's going to draw a mix of older audience members who were kids or who were younger when the original came out, and then actual kids who are seeing it for the first time. How to Train Your Dragon is still a very popular franchise, even though the audience fell for the animated versions as time went on. I think that there's been enough of a gap, and I think that there are enough people that love that first movie specifically who are going to show up and make this a box office hit. And this takes us to number 1, and for many of the same reasons, the movie that I'm picking to be the number 1 movie at the box office this summer is Lilo and Stitch. Everything that I just said about How to Train Your Dragon, multiply that by 2. I think that this is going to be a cross-generational audience. People that were kids back at the turn of the century when Lilo and Stitch came out, who 20 years later maybe don't have kids and want to go see the live-action movie just for themselves, who do have kids and want to go see the movie with their kids, or even people that didn't see the first movie and have kids because it's a kids movie. I really think this is going to be able to pull in from a lot of quadrants. I think it's going to do big numbers across generational lines. I have a high degree of confidence in the movie. I think it's going to be in the top 3. Maybe not number 1, but I would actually put the most confidence in my pick here at number 1, more than in many years in the past. Now, this is where we replay this clip, and I'm totally wrong on it. But I just think that Lilo and Stitch is going to do very well. It opens on Memorial Day weekend. It has a lot of runway. And I think that Disney's got a hit on their hands after they just bombed with a live-action remake with Snow White. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading the audience completely wrong, but that's what I think. So these are my predictions for the summer 2025 box office top 10 domestically. Number 1, Lilo and Stitch. Number 2, How to Train Your Dragon. Number 3, Superman. Number 4, The Fantastic Four: First Steps. Number 5, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Number 6, Jurassic World: Rebirth. Number 7, F1. Number 8, Thunderbolts. Number 9, Elio. And number 10, The Bad Guys 2. This is my accuracy in making box office predictions when it comes to the summer box office, going all the way back to 2015. So this is the 10th time that I have made summer predictions. Of course, I skipped 2020 because there was no summer box office in 2020. I average around 8 out of 10. I've gotten 8 out of 10 the last 2 years running. I got 10 out of 10 back in 2022. My worst years were in 2015 and 2016 when I got 7 out of 10. Overall, I'm 73 out of 90 for an 81.1% accuracy range. But I think that I could very easily do worse than that this year because there are lots of movies that I debated putting on the top 10. Final Destination: Bloodlines. There is often an R-rated film, a genre film that breaks through and makes the top 10. It opens in May. I could see that if another movie disappoints, cracking the top 10. Freakier Friday back in August. You want to talk about crossing generational lines? If that's able to draw a substantial audience and outpace some of these other films, that could easily be a top 10 movie. 28 years later, again, R-rated film, there is often one that breaks the top 10. We're seeing a resurgence in horror. Alex Garland, Danny Boyle, there's a lot of curiosity around this franchise. So 28 years later, especially if it's a great movie, does well, I could see it being in the top 10. The remake of I Know What You Did Last Summer, I honestly was a lot higher on this film before I saw the trailer. I don't think the trailer looks very good, but if it puts up Scream type numbers, brings in the 90s horror nostalgia crowd, I could see it being a top 10 movie. The Naked Gun is a bit of a wild card. It's a comedy. Comedies can be hit or miss, but if it's really, really good, then I could see it playing throughout August. Karate Kid Legends, again, cross-generational thing. If the Cobra Kai audience shows up to buy tickets for Karate Kid Legends, if it's a great movie in the vein of the original Karate Kid, it could do very well and crack the top 10. Ballerina, the John Wick spinoff movie with Ana de Armas, troubled production history, but if it's a great action film, then it could play well through the month of June. Megan 2.0, I think that some of the social heat has worn off of that film, but if it gets memeable, if it gets the irony / meme crowd to show up, then I could see Megan 2.0 hitting that top 10. And then Smurfs. Speaking of memes, who knows if there could be like a Gentle Minion type meme that pops up around the Smurfs movie this summer? It seems like something that could happen. And if it does, then irony viewing could drive Smurfs to the box office top 10. It's harder and harder to project how movies are going to do because you just don't know how they're going to be received in pop culture, etc. And there are other movies like Weapons, which looks really good. It's a horror film from the director Barbarian that's getting a lot of buzz, or a movie that's not on anyone's radar. Sound of Freedom was a complete surprise. It ends with us. I didn't see a whole lot of predictions last year that it was going to do as well as it did. So there's always the surprise factor, but those are my picks for the top 10. Let me know what you think of them down in the comments below. Give me your picks for what you think the top 10 summer movies are going to be, and we will see what happens over the next few months. All right, before we wrap things up, I quickly want to look at the latest in streaming, and we will start with the latest numbers from Netflix. This covers the week of April 14th through April 20th. At number 1 was I, Hostage, which is a new Netflix original film that brought in 15.12 million views. In second place was The Gardener, which brought in 12.28 million views, and then Black Mirror Season 7, which improved to 10.63 million views in its second week. The Glass Dome comes in fourth. This is a Swedish show about the search for a missing girl. The Passion of the Christ, not surprising given Easter week, comes in fifth place at 8.48 million views. The Lifeless is in sixth place. Ransom Canyon Season 1 comes in seventh place, a Netflix original Western drama. Adolescence comes in 8th place at 5.97 million views. Meet the Kumulos comes in 9th place. This is a South African movie about two moms whose kids end up getting together, and I assume that hilarity ensues. And then in 10th place is Life or Something Like It, which is a random movie that came out in 2002 starring Angelina Jolie and Ed Burns. She plays a TV reporter who's told by a psychic that she's going to die. I have no clue why it's here. It opened at number 5 behind Jason X 23 years ago, but here it is on the Netflix top 10 because that's just how the algorithm works sometimes. Looking at the most watched Netflix shows so far this year, since the beginning of 2025, Adolescence has now moved ahead of Squid Game Season 2, at least the portion of viewership that happened this year. At 130.16 million views, Squid Game Season 2 is in second place. Zero Day is in a distant third place at 53.61 million views. And when we look at the most watched Netflix programs in 2025, movies and series, Adolescence moves up to number 2 at 130.89 million views. It is very close now to Back in Action, which is still at number 1 at 147.21 million views. Squid Game Season 2 moves down to number 3. Let's look now at the latest numbers from Nielsen. Now, these are domestic numbers only, not global like we just saw. And they're about a month delayed because that's how long it takes for Nielsen to get those numbers to us. So this is for the week of March 24th through the 30th. Let's look at the most watched streaming movies first. The Lifeless debuts at number 1 at 12.916 million hours watched, just ahead of Moana 2, which continues to perform well on Disney+. Den of Thieves 2 Pantera is at number 3. Wicked is in the top 5 at 11.35 million hours watched. Craven the Hunter still sticking around at number 5. Despicable Me 4 is at number 6. The Electric State is at number 7. The Twister Caught in the Storm is at number 8. A Complete Unknown on Hulu makes its debut at 4.2 million hours watched. And Twisters, which I think Nielsen has wrong, it's actually streaming at this point even on Amazon, not on Peacock, which explains why it bubbled back up to the top 10 because it was on a new service, is at number 10 at 4.1 million hours watched. Looking at the most watched movies on streaming through March 30th here in the US, Back in Action is at number 1, but Moana 2 is very close to capturing that title. Despicable Me 4 is in 3rd, The Electric State's in 4th, Kraven the Hunter's in 5th, You're Cordially Invited is in 6th, but right behind it is Wicked on Peacock. It looks like it's angling to move up this chart. Moana moves down to number 8, the first Moana. Den of Thieves 2 Pantera enters the top 10 at number 9. Venom The Last Dance moves down to number 10. And Horizon Chapter 1 and Kinda Pregnant both drop out of the top 10. Looking at the most watched streaming shows for the week of March 24th through the 30th, The Residence captures the number 1 spot at 30.65 million hours watched. So it has a very strong second week on the chart. Again, it didn't move the needle that much globally on Netflix when we looked at those numbers, but it's doing well here domestically because of its White House setting. Reacher is in second place, followed by The White Lotus, which just keeps topping itself as far as hours watched. We're approaching the finale week for The White Lotus here on the charts, 18.4 million hours watched. And again, that's just on streaming. That does not count HBO viewership. Bluey comes in fourth place. Adolescent stays in the top 5. Grey's Anatomy is in 6th. NCIS is in 7th. 1923 is in 8th. SpongeBob SquarePants returns to the top 10 with 12 million hours watched, and Family Guy rounds out the top 10. And when we look at weekly performances for a streaming series so far this year, The Residence puts up the 4th best performance we've seen at 30.65 million hours. That's better than any week that we saw with Zero Day, and it comes in behind the first 2 weeks of The Night Agent 2 and the first week of Squid Game this year, which is an easy number 1 at 76.58 million hours watched. Looking at the top streaming show as far as watch time per available episode, Adolescence brought in 3.95 million hours of watch time per episode. That's just ahead of The Residence at 3.85 million hours per episode. Good American Family, which is a series airing on Hulu, comes in third place at 1.91 million hours watched, a weekly series, so it's not a binge series. Caught comes in fourth place at 1.14 million hours watched per episode. That's a full 6 episodes. 1923 is in fifth place, followed by The White Lotus at 921,000 hours per episode. This is the week that Reacher reached the end of its latest season, and it brought in 904,000 hours per episode. The Pit continuing to do well in the chart through 13 episodes. That's a weekly series with 664,000 hours watched per episode. I'm expecting that number to continue to rise. Severance comes in 9th place after concluding its second season at just about 500,000 hours per episode. And The Wheel of Time comes in 10th place at just over 400,000 hours per episode. And finally, just one quick update when we look at the most watched original streaming series of the year so far through March 30th. Running Point and 1923 both enter the top 10. American Primeval and Paradise exit the top 10. And Squid Game remains the most watched original streaming series of the year so far at 166.16 million hours watched. And that does it for the show this week. It was a long one, but before we go, I want to give you an idea of just a few things that you could watch at home and in theaters this upcoming week. First of all, today, a couple of movies are now available for premium video on demand or to buy at home. Premium video on demand are those higher priced limited rentals. Drop is now available on PVOD, and Death of a Unicorn is now available for premium video on demand and purchase. Also tonight, I'm looking forward to this, is the second batch of episodes for Andor Season 2 on Disney+. I really like the first batch, and from what I've heard, the season only gets better from there. Tomorrow, Megan is re-releasing in theaters. It's the first in Blumhouse's Halfway to Halloween series. They're also going to be doing re-releases of Annabelle and Ma in the weeks to come, although I should warn you, if you're planning to go see Megan in this re-release, Blumhouse is launching a partnership with Meta for a second screen feature where during the movie you get like trivia and behind the scenes stuff. So it seems like for this film and this re-release in theaters, phone use will not only be allowed, it will be encouraged. So if you prefer to go see a movie without everybody on their phone, which is me and almost everyone I know, then you should be prepared for this version of Megan, because it seems like unless there are special phone-only screenings, there will be a lot of phones out during the movie because that is part of the selling point for the film. Why? I don't know. On Thursday, Another Simple Favor hits Amazon Prime. It's the sequel to the film from Paul Feig, starring Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick, and I'm sure discussion around this movie will only be focused on the movie itself. Also on Thursday, hitting Netflix is a new series called The Four Seasons. It's an 8-episode series about a group of couples who deal with one of them splitting up over the course of the year. The series was co-created by Tina Fey, who also co-stars along with Steve Carell, Will Forte, and Coleman Domingo. That is a great cast right there. Then on Friday, as we've been talking about, Thunderbolts hits theaters, the latest entry in the MCU. I was not able to make it to an advanced screening of this one, largely because there weren't any for critics anywhere near me. So I'm going to go see it on Thursday. I'm going to maybe try to get a review out for Thursday evening, because I want to get my thoughts on that. I'm sure the other ones probably have hit today. I don't really know what people have been saying about the movie officially as far as reviews go. Also hitting theaters on Thursday is Rosario, a horror movie about a woman who discovers dark secrets in her dead grandmother's apartment. The Surfer is also hitting theaters this weekend. Nicolas Cage fights for his right to hang 10 on a local beach. If it's playing near me, I might have to check it out. Come on, it's Nick Cage. In a limited number of theaters, and I believe also available at home, is the release of Rust, which, if you don't know what Rust is, it is the movie where the cinematographer of the film, Helena Hutchins, was tragically shot and killed on set. Alec Baldwin was on trial for it. There was a huge amount of media coverage around it. Of course, that trial ended with the case being dismissed due to how the case itself was prosecuted. They went back and finished the film. It's now getting released. I have really mixed feelings about this. I think that you should honor the life of Helena Hutchins and her work. But at the same time, I just don't know how the movie can stand apart from everything that surrounds it. But if you're curious about Rust and you want to see it, it'll be in a limited number of theaters and available for rent at home this upcoming weekend. Also hitting streaming this weekend is Black Bag, which is debuting on Peacock. I actually missed Black Bag when it was in theaters, so I think I probably will try to watch it at some point this weekend. Then on Sunday night, Monty Python and the Holy Grail is celebrating its 50th anniversary with a Fathom release nationwide. It will also be in theaters next Tuesday and Wednesday. The Walking Dead, Dead City, Season 2. Yeah, those spinoffs are still going. The new season debuts on AMC on Sunday night, and also on Disney Plus to celebrate Star Wars Day, May the 4th. Star Wars Tales of the Underworld debuts. This is an animated series brought to you by Dave Filoni. It's a 6-episode series focusing on the characters of Cad Bane and Asajj Ventress, because Dave Filoni loves those animated characters. And that's all I've got for you this week. It was a lot to go through, so I appreciate you sticking around. Be sure to check out the description to find out more about Square, the sponsor of this video. And be sure to stay tuned right here for more movie news, reviews, box office, and more. I'll be back soon, hopefully to talk about Andor. If I like this next batch as much as I like the last one, I'll probably do that here on the channel, as well as Thunderbolts late Thursday night or early Friday morning. May even do a spoiler review on Saturday if the movie warrants it. So potentially a busy week right here. Be sure to hit that bell so you're notified of when I release a new video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.